the simple life.
Hello, welcome to 90 Years Ago This Week. We are at week December 11 to 17, 1932, and we have a couple of great artists to feature this week. The first artist we are going to feature is the Bennie Moten Kansas City Orchestra. As the name implies, they were based in Kansas City. However, they were touring the eastern United States in the winter of 1932 and ended up in the New York City area and got to go into a recording studio in Camden, New Jersey, which is across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. And because it was not easy for a band that was located so far away from major recording studios to record, they ended up recording 12 songs in one day. And this band really cooks. I'm just going to let you know some of the musicians in the band on that recording session. The leader was Bennie Moten, and sometimes he played second piano, but their primary piano player was a guy named William Basie, better known as Count Basie. On trumpet, they had Hot Lips Page and Joe Keys. On trombones, they had Dan Miner and Eddie Durham. On alto saxophone and baritone saxophone, they had Jack Washington. On tenor saxophone, they had Ben Webster. And on bass, they had Walter Page. And singing, the guy singer in the band was Jimmy Rushing. There were additional musicians, but you'll recognize perhaps that most of those names came to be associated with the Count Basie Orchestra, and that is because Bennie Moten passed away a couple of years after this recording session, and Count Basie took over the band, and it evolved into the Count Basie Orchestra. And actually, the roots of the Count Basie Orchestra go back even further than the Bennie Moten Kansas City Orchestra, because back in the late 1920s and early 30s, the bass player, Walter Page, led his own band, Walter Page's Jazz Devils. They were based out of Oklahoma City, I believe. And in that band was Hot Lips Page and Dan Miner and Jimmy Rushing, and of course Walter Page himself. And my understanding is that over the years, the late 20s into early 30s, Bennie Moten kept poaching the best musician from Walter Page's band, and eventually Walter Page threw in the towel and he himself joined up with the Bennie Moten Orchestra. The song, of those 12 songs that they recorded, they're all great. The one I'm going to draw attention to today is called Moten Swing. And it became a big band swing standard as soon as this record was cut on December 13th, 1932. And what's interesting about it is that if you know the song You're Driving Me Crazy, you will recognize that it is the exact same chord changes. And in fact, that is where the song came from. The band was playing the song You're Driving Me Crazy, and they would start and run through it once playing the melody, and then they would go off and create their own riffs to the same chord changes. And when they went into the recording studio, due to the limitations of the length of music you could put onto one side of a 78 RPM, back in those days it was just over 3 minutes. Of course, live they could play much longer, so they decided to just cut off the first run of the verse with the melody and just start right in with their own improvised riffs and melodies. And then they realized that by doing so, they could actually claim composition credit for the piece. So that's what they did. And then, many groups subsequently covered this tune as Moten Swing. And in fact, in 1994, a jazz pianist by the name of Dick Hyman came out with a CD called From the Age of Swing. And he recombined those two songs, You're Driving Me Crazy and Moten Swing, in a very swinging, great version. But here's the original 1932 recording of, or some of, the original 1932 recording of Moten Swing. The next song we're going to feature was recorded the very next day, December 14th, 1932, in New York City by the Washboard Rhythm Kings. And the song is called Blue Drag. Just as the Bennie Moten Orchestra had recorded a dozen songs the previous day, the Washboard Rhythm Kings recorded a similarly large number of songs, 10, in one day. I guess it was difficult getting into the studio, and groups seemed to be making the most of it when they had the opportunity. This song had been previously recorded by the Earl Hines Orchestra in the summer of 1932, but only an instrumental version. And this version by the Washboard Rhythm Kings has lyrics and vocals. The Washboard Rhythm Kings recorded between 1931 and 1933, numerous sessions. They were a very fun and lively group, as you will hear, although this song is not does not reflect their zanier side. It's perhaps their most on reflecting more their serious side. I believe that they were either at least signed to a record company, if not perhaps even put together, in response to the success that Cab Calloway had with Minnie the Moocher in early 1931. That song, that recording, was a huge hit, and again, the 1932 being a very racist time, where the record companies thought that there were distinct separate black and white markets. Minnie the Moocher was quite the crossover hit. And so I suspect that a competing record company was going to try to recreate that success, perhaps with the Washboard Rhythm Kings. That they didn't. They never achieved the success that Cab Calloway had. But nonetheless, the Washboard Rhythm Kings made a number of very fine recordings in a few short years. Another thing to note about the Washboard Rhythm Kings is that similar to other groups, certain other groups, they recorded under more than one name for more than one record company. They also recorded in this period, 1931 to 33, under the name the Washboard Rhythm Boys and also the Washboard Rhythm Band. And I believe this was due to them perhaps cheating their primary record company. In those days, the musicians were just paid union scale rates for making records. And they did not benefit from the royalties of the records being sold. So the musicians were primarily interested in getting into the recording studios as often as possible to earn a little extra money. And so, in addition to recording for the record company that they were legally signed to, they would kind of moonlight under various names and record for other record companies. They were not the only group that did this. Duke Ellington and his orchestra certainly did this as well. But let's hear Blue Drag by the Washboard Rhythm Kings.
Blue drag, oh, it got my soul on fire. I know that I'll never tire of that low down blue drag.